Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back after a lunch break. We are in the part we are in the room where it is the client's behalf, and we are going to discuss as to how building quality is going to develop. And that's why we have representatives from state and municipality, Jurģis Rasa from Ventspils municipality. Please welcome Baiba Vītoliņa, the manager of the users there. Jānis, I'm sorry, Aivars Siliņš, Jānis Lāčovnieks, Ziedā Damos, MCH Group, Builders Group, as well as foreign expert from Estonia, and he's going to give his verdict as to how we have to think in the future, as well as maybe he will get some ideas as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, today's discussion will be based on 3 surveys. The summary of those 3 surveys is accessible to you. One is the summary of the survey of the Competition Council, as well as from State Revenue Service and Ministry of Finance as the summary on construction industry as such, as well as summary of the survey by the Construction State Control Bureau as to applicable measures of the industry. So you can find summaries in your handout materials. Full text of surveys will be available for you in the respective web pages of the organizations. So let's we have to think about the vision, and that's why we will answer to 3 questions: how to develop business environment and reduce shadow economy, how to strengthen the competitiveness and increase export capacity of construction industry, as well as how to improve quality of building and safety thereof to meet today's requirements and challenges. But let's keep to our respective area or domain that we are representing, because I will take 3 recommendations from each of you, and later on we will get together with the recommendations that people next door will work out, and all together we have full scale of recommendations for Mr. Spiridonovs to use. So, let's start with you, Jurģis. Do you agree? So I have to answer to those questions? No, actually you have 10 minutes, each of you, and then we have discussions, or maybe we'll answer to questions from the audience. I would recommend you to speak into the microphone and speak freely. We are in a free country here. So hello. First of all, I wanted to say that the first 2 questions are not for me, because I am representative building inspection, and my question relates to the quality and safety of buildings. That's why we look at the new legislation that we have, all the regulations, etc., etc. That's what I deal with, and that's why I can say that we, as construction board, we have difficulties with the new legislation, because it is full of administrative processes for construction board. That's why we have lots of paperwork, or lots more of paperwork than it was before. And we lack human resources in order to do all of that. And we have less time for real inspections, on-spot inspections, in order to find out missing things or some drawbacks of the projects. That's what new. Speaking about the Legislation Act, the new regulatory framework as such, I have to say the following. There are about 8 special building recommendations for different types of buildings. I think it's a bit of over-legislation, because it's not understanding why there is a special division for, let's say, electric efficiency, electro-energy, electric network, etc., etc. So, although for gas, water, and heating production plants, there are no special regulations, although those buildings are similar as to their functionality for the sake of society. So I don't think special regulation is necessary. And the regulation per se, if they were similar and the procedures were quite similar or the same, then we as construction board would have less work to do, and that would be much easier for us. But the formation of those regulations are quite different, and for the same processes there are different ways of handling them, different documentation requirements, etc., etc. And thus we have many more problems for construction board to fulfill everything, to hand out all the documents, to reply to all the requests, etc. And finally, to do the on-spot checks, because we have to go into detail as to each and every new regulation. That's about the new regulation. As to quality and safety, I have to say that the new legislation foresees quite a lot of quite a lot of responsibilities for people who are responsible for construction of a building, and I just hope that they will be followed and they will be fulfilled. And that was the main issue that we have to deal with, or we had to solve with the new legislation. But above all, that was due diligence of each and every specialist, and only then the buildings, especially public buildings, will be safe and secure, and then we will have no further questions as to if and why and when a building is safe. I'm not saying that everyone is doing their job negligibly, but no, that's not what I'm saying. There are some there might be some people, or there might be some issues problems that people try to solve in a different way, in a less costly way. And if you can somehow overstep the new regulation, then people, of course, try to do that. So there are quite a lot of regulations, and then there is this code that previous speakers already talked about, but it's not free of charge usually at the moment. This new code is free of charge, but I think the state should probably translate or make guidelines or follow-up guidelines later on, a small summary as to these codes that would be easy to follow. And in our municipality, in Ventspils, we have stated that we have some problems with streets or with wells. But we in Ventspils, we worked out our internal guidelines that we have to follow when building or reconstructing wells and streets. Our own guidelines led to the following. The situation has improved significantly, but the main principle, or the main thing, is that everyone who is involved in this process takes those guidelines into account. So that's what matters. So the next speaker, Darba, please, the floor is yours.
Jā, paldies.
Thank you. And I'm Baiba Vietoliņa, Director of the Consumer Protection Center, and my task on behalf of the state is to follow that the building materials used for construction would comply with the required requirements as regards information and data to be provided. So what we as a supervision authority consider to be the majority of challenges in the market. So of course shadow economy is not my priority in that, but I think that we have talked and negotiated for several years that we as a supervision authority lack. This is a detailed requirements for building materials in building or construction. Legislation for manufacturers of such would be clear about what particular information should be provided. And as we know, standards include a comprehensive list of those properties that might be of significant impact on building materials. The standards are applicable to, but manufacturer can choose whether to indicate one significant parameter if construction standards or regulations do not apply differently or otherwise. And I really consider it to be a challenge that nothing similar happens in the construction sector, as our construction legislation and laws and regulations do not include such a requirement. And it's really significant for us to understand about accessibility of standards, which is not a problem in Latvia, but we really consider that it might be for entrepreneurs, and we think that several European countries should be exemplified and the best practice should be taken over therefrom. So I have a good case study from Austria when our Consumer Protection Centers cooperated and particular building materials were established databases where entrepreneurs found them very easily by internet browsers what parameters should be required, and that information database would be a task for us to tackle by joint efforts, so that businesses and businessmen would really find that much more easier and would imply in their work and in their operation accordingly. One of the main tasks we are doing daily, that is market supervision and surveillance. We really control the building materials at stores, at shops and on sites, on construction sites. And if we detect some building materials originating from European Union member states, so it's quite hard for us to terminate distribution of that particular building material in Latvia and in Europe, as we see that there is quite a difference and quite diversified application or interpretation of that building materials directive, and it's really hard for us to work and to motivate and justify our decisions be against those manufacturers, and also judicature as regards of the application of that particular regulation to manufacturer located in other member state. And of course, among institutions of supervision and consumer rights supervision and all other stakeholders involved in the process, it would be really good if we really harmonized our understanding and interpretation of those regulations and that building material directive as regards information. We also have colleagues from technical supervision body. We are cooperating. Unfortunately, Lithuanian colleagues are not present now here, but yesterday we discussed and we met. We will have a common, a joint project. We will choose one particular building material or a type of building material. So extracted polystyrol, which is a heat insulating agent. And in all Baltic countries, that material will be assessed in a single mode or single manner. And we will start that cooperation project and will try for development henceforth in other sectors as well. So, and that seems all. So I consider that during discussion we'll have another things occurring. So, oversealing, state, real estate. So I consider that majority of the audience knows what the state real estate company is. So Riga Castle, cross-bordering point. Next year we will have a new Riga theatre located at 25 Large Pleasure Street, and the next phase for museum dormitory depository. Those are projects counting millions of euros to be spent thereon, but tendency is that we as a client or as contracting authority will have to place orders. And in the next 3 to 5 years, we will have several hundred million euro projects pending. So we are deeply involved in the process. So I would like to mention that we have a proposal to pay more attention to several issues. We spend a lot of resources so that during tenders, contractors and constructors would be checked, so due diligence is thoroughly conducted. And often we face the situations when really unfair and deliberate falsification of documents will take place, as if accidentally. With this and detect situations and cases that for qualifying for a tender, a company offer CVs and qualifications and licenses of civil engineers who are actually died already. Among those forms we request to fill out, we receive estimates where several rows with completely different figures are included, but at the end those figures are not encountered in total and grand sums of the project, but those sums accidentally included sums occur already in the contract on construction. So some rows and some items in the estimates have been hidden, sometimes damping prices, and hidden agreements have been concluded, and there are cases when it completely obvious that subcontractors will be cheated in the end. And we must carry out that due diligence, or we face or detect such cases before we sign a contract. And at present, we try to avoid situations when in a flagman project, subcontractor is involved. So we consider expansion of responsibility of a general contractor to be expanded, and in general contract agreement we have included a provision that if subcontractor doesn't receive remuneration for the work carried out, they can address the contracting authority, and upon presentation of the supporting and justifying documents and invoices, will receive remuneration directly from us. And we come to the situation what the poor link would be in that supply chain. So if one link is missing, so a structure or building will be unsafe and unstable. So we all are linked together for high quality and responsibility, joint responsibility for the process. Thus, the process would comply with our preferred result and outcome. So designers must be responsible for non-presence of any mistakes and errors. And if some errors are detected during construction period and construction stage, so we must consider in what manner those errors could be eliminated and how those potential losses could be prevented during construction phase. And all that chain, supply or delivery chain, so the quality of construction should not be implied or subject upon the contractor or constructor or a construction inspector. We sometimes face situations which are as if publicly known, but sometimes we really face more global trends and more global cases when we spend a lot of resources for preventing, and those are public, state resources and state funds. As many, a part of society and a part of public really reminds us that what we are doing, why we are spending so much on trivial things, and why our contractors and constructors are not fair and honest. Thus, we invite and call for addressing professional certification and qualification centers, and so that those commissions or standing committees on ethics would review more cases which actually happen. We definitely support an idea that not only construction companies are classified in categories of buildings and categories of projects they would qualify, but in the future we should also consider that opportunity for construction and design companies and building or construction engineers and inspectors should be categorized and classified for particular types of projects. So we had one project worth approximately 5 million euros, and if supervisor or engineer of the construction delivers services for 7,000 euro, he may spend only a part or several hours a week. But according to our legislation, so in a small-scale project, the building supervisor should be present at least 2 full working days during a working week. Of course, there are different issues to be tackled and solved in the construction sector, and they should be tackled not only by the constructors not being aware of the majority or vast diversity of modern technologies available. As I mentioned on construction process, total assessment would be the following. Whether a civil engineer, a designer, a general contractor or contracting authority is incompetent and is not fair and honest, so the project will be doomed to failure. Thank you so much. My name is Jānis Lāčovnieks. I represent United States Financial Foundation, and we are among the best representatives of that foundation in Latvia. I have a very similar reflection of the issues, but perhaps we as a private investors are at a better position, as choice is quite not limited by the public procurement law. For public or for state authorities, we as a private investor can choose among the most appropriate supplier of services based on our previous experience, on recommendations of our partners, so we can choose the best, the most optimal candidate. But as regards business environment, we are really concerned and worried. And the first speaker from Ventspils mentioned that we have that response and feedback that our construction projects sometimes are really stuck in the construction board. And if before we could implement those construction projects in 12 to 14 months, so that now takes approximately between 18 to 24 months. And that investment environment is not facilitated and encouraged by such bureaucracy as a construction board as regards a heap of documents to be provided. As regards lack of medium category managers on construction sites, management is not quite competent, thus harming really the construction budget and the time limits and deadlines. As regards safety of buildings, we have the laws and regulations we observe and comply, but in the last project, and as far as I know, that other investors all around are using and applying the best practice. And as regards sustainability, we are using green certificates. And as we are a United States-based investors, we also consider alternative types of certification that allows enabling to some extent those the best practice examples to be harmonized. So, and that is all I wished to add, as the previous speakers really entangled those issues. And as we are taking back to ask questions and answers
from Latvian colleagues, and the main question is, I believe, about this professionality in all levels, how to get to people to be and act professional, how you are coping with this, because that's, I believe, is a common issue all around the globe. Or is this motivation, or is this sanctions, or combination of both of them? And the second question, a bit referring back to your presentation at the beginning of the day, was that you especially underlined the responsibility of all actors in the whole chain of construction. So how you are ensuring this responsibility, because you know when all are responsible, then that's a shared responsibility, and threat of that is that none of them are really responsible. What is those mechanisms you are maintaining this real responsibility within the system?
Well, as far as the... Can you hear me without that? No. Probably not. As far as the responsibility of the parties is concerned, then of course that's a direct legal responsibility as well. It's not just a matter of semantics, and the norms explicitly foresee that certain functions have to be carried out professionally, and of course depending on the result, but substantial failure to undertake those functions in a quality manner can result to criminal penalty. It's a criminal offense, and yes, we've seen also disputes between different parties in a construction process in terms of contractual relationship and so to say regression, that who should bear the cost, or should you okay, I was now punished criminally, but should you perhaps bear some of the cost involved with contractual relationships. But I would say that reasonably defined legislation should be actually enough, or I think it is working relatively well in Estonian context. And listening to the interventions here before, of course, the spectrum of issues is pretty similar. And with regard to the shadow economy, the general measures are also quite obvious. What I heard before, and we are also implementing either identically or similarly also in Estonia. We have general measures like the state promotes the use of standardized contract templates between parties, also public procurement wise standardized procurement solutions, and we have this one-stop shop for public construction procurements, state real estate company. That is really good, I think. In this respect, we have provisions in the law that prohibits from a certain level, but prohibits tax offenders, for example, to participate in the procurements. And I also wanted to share a bit more practical note that as far as the shadow economy is concerned and the tax revenue is concerned, that there seem to be at least two measures that have really been working well in Estonia over the last year or so. And the one being the electronic registration of workers, and the second being the obligation to declare all invoices above 1,000 euros in tax administrations. They have a sort of a system for that. And then construction sector seems to be rather, how to say, rather attractive for shadow economy. The level of shadow economy, according to different studies by KPMG, for example, is relatively low in Estonia compared to other Eastern European countries. But construction sector is, of course, in the top sectors of shadow economy. And talking about figures, the estimation by the revenue tax administration in Estonia is that 1 year ago they estimated the share of, so to say, shadow workers or unregistered non-tax paying workers in the sector to amount to something like 25–30%. And they say that these new measures have reduced the share to 6 to 7%. Of the workforce. So they have like a 30-person team for that. They say it takes 40 seconds to verify your registration, your status on the construction site, and they visit like 1,000 construction sites a year. And at least their estimation is that in terms of taxes, it has resulted in something like plus 100 million euros in tax revenue in Estonia, which is a substantial sum compared to the whole amount. So this is at least something that seems to be working in Estonia.
Thank you very much. And this is not the first time when the story about tax declarations over 1,000 euros for the invoices is jumping out in different conferences. As at the particular moment, as I know, in the Northern Europe, that's the like biggest story everyone is telling to everyone, because it's really increasing the transparency of payments and the taxes as a revenue at the end. Dāmas un kungi, jautājumu laiks šajā mirklī, ja jums...
And now it's the time for questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do have them, we are happy to answer. Please, you will be provided with a microphone. Microphone will be brought to you. Do you have anyone questions as to how we can make things better? I have a question about this professionalism. In order to do away with this feeling that we are just trying to theoretically speak about things, how to ensure professionalism amongst workers. If you knew the answer, then you might probably be elected a dean of a university. There is no one answer, but please let's think about best ways to ensure qualification and professionalism. Maybe do we have to do with punitive measures or with some incentive measures? On the contrary, for example, about those guidelines. You said about those wells in Ventspils, on the roads of Ventspils, and you came up with those guidelines. And in Ventspils, everyone is diligent, and they're just opening the guidelines and and constructing wells that are functioning and roads that are good and functioning. How did it all work? Did you create some additional preconditions, or was it just an administrative burden for you, or how did you solve it? Okay, first of all, we understand that we do it for ourselves, and all parties are locals. So the general contractor, the executioners, and the end users are from our municipality, are locals. We are doing it for ourselves, and I think that's the main thing, or the middle, or the core of the success. What did the constructors do? The constructors bought the same measuring instruments as the inspectors are using, and they were actually measuring their work step by step in order not to receive any fines and not to be asked to redo something. The same about the quality of the paving surface. We came up with a request for additional testing. And yes, the executioners of the job, they actually went to the laboratory to test the material, the pavement material themselves. And that's the result. But actually, the core issue is that everyone is responsible because they are working for them. Yes, I think that this is how it should work, because there are some theories or world theories that the street bureaucrats or the people, locals, are the ones who are the main regulators. How did you come up with this new regulation? Why doesn't it work in a state level? I don't believe that you are such an exclusive place and that you have gathered all the diligent citizens there in Ventspils. Why this experience of yours doesn't work in the whole of Latvia? When we worked out these guidelines, that wasn't the case when we were sitting and doing nothing and deciding on new guidelines. No, they were all interested parties. They were, for example, people from the municipality, from the respective units, etc., and people who come up for checkups, etc., as well as from people from Riga. They came and gave us some advice on those guidelines. So you partially responded already to my question. So you said that there might be that not all involved or interested parties are asked to the table of negotiation of a new regulation in a state level. That's what you are saying, yes. I might say the same. When we are making this procurement procedure, we ask for a client to sit at the table as well as a person who is a general contractor, as well as real executioner, so everyone is present at a table when we work out the public procurement requirement. So it is quite realistic and it is set in stone at the very beginning of the process. Others, please, on professionalism. I wanted to continue on the same.
So the professionalism and code of ethics to be included, it depends also on vocational training and education establishment, whether it is a university or a college or etc. That would include really a training course or some theoretical class for combining that professional organizations that would provide and adopt some codes of conduct, for instance, for civil engineers, and future civil engineers would really follow those codes of conduct. As regards technical requirements, we are not following how honestly they are conducted, but we are not considering consciousness of every person, but we are following and concerning and reviewing only the figures in the reports and in the measurement in tools. So, of course, it should include opportunity for people to be informed, to be trained on particular possibilities, but sufficient opportunities for stick to be implemented as well. If we have only carrots and no stick at all, there will be no motivation to observe and follow and comply with the requirements. But in general, really consider another thing to be important not only in the construction sector, but I think that to be responsible at every stage, at every action of every person should be really trained and brought up in every child, starting from the kindergarten. So we should learn that to and teach to our children at school already. But of course, that consciousness should develop only at a legally arranged environment. So welcome your comment. So I actually do not have a question, but really comment, and quite philosophical one. So in current discussion, unfortunately, I cannot agree. Professionalism is a very essential quality or property of a person, and I really agree, I fully agree to Ms. Vitual in saying that responsibility and consciousness should be really trained and taught already from the kindergarten. But who would really take that professionalism up to the sky? And that is sufficiently competent professional organization in every discipline and in every sector for achieving your wish would apply appropriate consequences and punishment to every action, every negative action. And I would like to mention an example that in the case of tragedy in Zolitude, the trial will last for 5 to 10 years, and in the very result that screw will be sent to Siberia, and if somebody will be really nailed with such screw. What I have detected and witnessed punishments for a really low punishment, low professionalism. In many countries, if you as a professional and your signature really means something is worth, and even falsification of that signature is punishable, and punishment should include really fine or etc. So, and if any error was made during the project that led to tragedy in Zolitude, all the responsible and persons in charge and guilty persons should be punished appropriately, and that professional certification or qualification should be taken away immediately. And only in that case we will really reach the situation and motivation existing in Ventspils. So competition council, so the issue on responsibility, on positive example like optionally voluntary responsibility and professionalism was introduced, but as my colleague already mentioned, whether at all levels we have really a legal responsibility anticipated and really defined. That is my question. So according to your experience, starting...
You were mentioned in the comment, please.
I just wanted to echo those last couple of comments that I think Estonian construction code foresees quite a bit of more responsibility, legal responsibility, and also personalized responsibility for parties in the construction process compared to that of Latvia. But still there are two sides of the coin, so you can't escape the necessity to have a really demanding and diligent client. If you don't have a client that is demanding professionalism, then you can't beat the professionalism into the formula by the state. It is impossible. So there have to be two sides, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jūsu atbild uz izskanējušiem komentāriem.
So your answer to the questions raised. Do we have sufficiently strong professional or vocational organizations or associations being an inalienable constituent of any democratic country in daily regime? So unfortunately, I do not remember who mentioned that if you address those organizations or associations with such issues, but no feedback is received. Perhaps actually agree to the gentleman mentioning that we do not have any contradiction in the statements of ours, and I'm really confident that for those being violating a lot in the sector, so opportunity to practice should be taken away and exempted already. So unfortunately I have witnessed during my experience, and we have really recommended that construction license or professional license should be revoked for particular persons, but unfortunately didn't actually happen, as professional associations had no feedback or no action taken on that recommendation. Perhaps laws and regulations should be improved. Perhaps I have a primitive understanding of the construction process, but when a phone is produced, every detail, every constituent of that telephone safety, so manufacturer is completely and fully responsible for that device being produced and manufactured. And I think that that person who is placing orders on every detail, on every supplying material or building material for a construction project is also fully legally responsible, as of course contracting authority wishes the cheapest, whereas contractor wishes to take a job, and there's something mismatching and leading to such even tragic problems. And I think shared responsibility is not the best option. Thank you. We have questions. So the first gentleman here, Vilnis Tirsis, Member of Parliament. So, as regards professionalism, how professionalism could be improved? So we must achieve that non-professionals would not be chosen in tenders, in contests, etc., and those contracting authorities could make an optimal decision, at least placing information in Google browser, and as soon as they receive any information on complaints, poor quality, etc., and they would not select that constructor. Mr. Siliņš mentioned that procurement procedures are rougher, less flexible, and that sometimes really prevent to choose the best professional contractor. Currently, we have a discussion on new public procurement law, and Mr. Siliņš, perhaps you could really propose some practical and pragmatic ideas that might enable you not to choose non-professional, and perhaps Estonian colleague could comment on that as well. Perhaps Estonia has some really good and attractive proposals and ideas on that. So completely short answer. So yes, we support much in that new draft law on Public Procurement Act. But we are really supporting the idea of that law to exist at all. As under current law, we really invest excessive effort to receive the most beneficial and the most economically feasible, as we have to justify up to the smallest detail in order to justify that we are using and we are selecting the economically the best and feasible and rentable solution. And we are really hoping for that new draft law to be adopted.
It was the question was partly addressed also to a Estonian colleague, and I'm going to repeat that. If I'm mistaken, then please correct me. But the question was about the reputation within any public. No.
I understood that the issue was how do we select the good and the bad during the public procurement process? And to tell you the truth, I don't know the details, but I'll ask my colleagues to comment. Do you know the practicalities? How the public procurement IT system works? You don't know? Okay. Then I can't comment on that.
Okay, but you have your own system for the solution on that, yeah?
There is a state Ministry of Finance IT-based registry and system, and there are definitely some functionalities to that, but I can't comment on that in more detail because I don't know. I don't use that system myself.
Okay, thank you. There was a question. Yes.
Aivars Brīnums.
My name is Aivars Brīnums. I have read construction regulation in depth. I have read this law, and I'm going to comment on what has been said already. So, you spoke as if about the responsibility of builders or constructors. I am not representing builders or constructors. I am representing supervisors of those processes. So let's say the general contractor is the one who asks for works to be fulfilled, and from that moment this person can ask for make someone liable for the works performed, and then every part of the chain is responsible for his or her work. The next regulatory framework defining an object is are building regulations. That is the lower legislation level that may not be neglected. So let's start from that. Who is responsible for what? The responsibility for drafting, responsibility for choosing the drafter, and responsible for drafting the procurement. And this is the responsibility actually of a general contractor. That is the overall responsibility. And even in the old legislation, it has been so, but you have not read it carefully because you have not read the whole law in a whole, as a united document. I am responding to what Ms. Vitoviņa said about this this building material. And in the legislation, it is being said that building materials that have been produced outside the particular site, building site, those materials are subject to certain criteria that has been defined by the regulatory framework of that particular building material. So we should not mix two things together. We should not ask for people to be responsible for things that they have no slightest idea of. When everyone will fulfill its own obligations, then everything will be fine. You all are praising this new legislation, this building legislation. I believe it's not good. It is actually bad. Why? Because 95% of the old regulation is copy-pasted in the new one, and some twists and unnecessary additions has been added to that, and that has been defined or named as a new building law. That's it. Okay. I actually didn't see a contradiction as to where you mentioned my name, but okay. You were saying something about who is responsible for a building construction material that has been produced outside the building site, and that there are separate regulations defining that. And you said that unfortunately the interpreters cannot hear because no microphone is being used. Some numbers or articles from the new legislation are quoted. Sorry. So maybe the construction board should not be the one in charge whether an element should be in a color green or color white. Construction board should be responsible for basic functions of a building. So we are kind of ridiculing the new role and overestimating the role of construction board or exaggerating it. Okay, fine. Any more questions? About the public procurement and this new regulation, saying that in the existing process you have a lot of effort to put into solving and testing the compliance certification, etc., etc. How it's going to be addressed with the new legislation? Okay, what are the pros and cons of the new regulation? You know, I didn't think that we are going to judge or to balance the new regulation. From the 1st of January next year, there will be this gradation of construction companies, or there will be limits as to which companies may apply for projects of certain scale. For example, I recently had a project worth 10 million, and there were 6 contractors being contracted. You can imagine the workload that we had to do, the paperwork, and at the moment this procurement procurement takes, let's say, already 6 or 7 months, because general contractors or those construction companies, they are even trying to litigate or trying to object as to what has been written into the public procurement guidelines or requirements. So I am very, very glad that with this new legislation, as the 1st of January, we will have it's set in stone that small companies will not be able to participate in large-scale projects, and that will already save my time, and that will already save the time of my employees. And I hope that in the future this process of procurement will not take half a year, but much less, and we will start building building houses, building objects of public interest much faster, because this qualification or this gradation according to the qualification will be in place, and only those qualified people and will be able to participate in procurements of certain scale, for projects of certain scale. Okay, next question. First of all, I wanted to thank this gentleman, Mr. Brīnums, and I wanted to say that builders should pay more attention to their work, and I agreed to that. But another issue was raised here. Why? Why this procedure is allowed, and it's a legal procedure, that there might be an enterprise, a building enterprise, with 5 subcontractors, and the choice of some subcontractors has not been specified as to the work that they are going to perform, but according to some unknown criteria, because there are no clear guidelines as to, let's say, how big a company should or how much work should a company do, or a worker, what's the workload. So the figures could be artificially made. A contractor might say that I'm not able to perform those tasks, so that's why I have to use 2 subcontractors, and those subcontractors could even use subcontractors, and finally no one is responsible for anything, and we have cases like Maxima. Thank you.
So, any comment to the statement of the gentleman before? Brigitte Vīksne, representative of the Ministry of Economics. I wished to comment on chains of subcontractors. So our existing practice. So in Austria, they have discussed the issue. How would it be possible to limit those chains of subcontractors? And the new framework has really considered that opportunity. Otherwise, we have become like a very policing country. Of course, it's very good that market is very open and everybody has equal opportunity. But what regards the regulation of subcontractor chains, that is opportunity to provide in a contract how much levels of subcontraction he or the authority wished to see it. So it is possible according to existing legislation. Thank you for your comment. Renārs Lūsis, Labor Inspectorate of the country. So Estonian colleague mentioned their experience, and he said similarly to Latvia, they have public procurement agreement, automatic or electronic register of employees, etc. But it is very interesting that our representatives from Latvia mentioned that grey economy encountered for 35 to 40%, and the constructors also had their conference convened when the subcontractor chains are limited up to 4 to 5 levels only, and they are not encountering cases like in Latvia. Then subcontractors subcontractor chains are 19 levels long. So it means that every mediator or in-between company really takes commission, and the last subcontractor has so low salary, and thus they are really evading taxes, not paying wages to employees, and they are trying to fulfill and perform or execute that order. And I really do not see any economic rentability and profitability for existence of such so long subcontractor chains. And we really see opportunities to request responsibility of general contractors, as I consider that this situation cannot be tackled and solved by every labor inspector being placed at every employee of construction sector. Thus, more responsibility of general contractors should be requested in order to supervise the situation with subcontractors, and decent working conditions and remuneration being paid to all the subcontractors and employees on site. As regards the issue on general contractors, perhaps somebody of the panel could comment on that, if any intention to speak would be alive. Yes, I would like to reiterate that contracting authorities and general contractors should be responsible. So, of course, I am dealing more with the quality of end product of building itself. But those questions, who is responsible utmost, that would really arrange the market condition as well. Yeah, slides.
As far as the main contractor's responsibility is concerned, then what I also reiterate what I mentioned in my presentation, that according to our construction code, the main contractor bears the overall responsibility. And just reading the actual provision in the code. But of course, according to my knowledge, this hasn't been tested in the courts yet in Estonia. So if in case there is a criminal proceedings, for example, it remains to be seen how it rolls out. But it is stipulated black and white. But the practice of using subcontractors and subcontractors, I think it depends on a market, and it's a flexibility issue, of course. So, if responsibility is clear, then it's perhaps not a problem. And as far as tax collection is concerned, tax administration doesn't care about the relation there. If you're on site and not registered, they calculate tax in a certain manner. That's it.
Okay, thank you. In this particular moment, ātrs varbūt komentārs.
Slight comment from the gentleman. So I have two short, brief comments on general contractor. So currently, a general contractor divides a contract into 5 parts, and he feels that there is no responsibility for himself. I consider that in the future we should really anticipate and start a procedure that the general contractor should fulfill and execute a particular and certain percentage or proportion of the job undertaken. So thus every employee working for general contractor should receive decent salary instead of subcontractor. And secondly, I would like to comment that currently every person issuing work to state in their request that work will be offered or conferred or awarded to the company or to a person offering the most rentable and the most beneficial price. And by substituting one word, the cheapest, you can achieve much more. Yeah, thank you. You will be the next in the order. So really, discussion is in the air, and the State Construction Control Inspectorate is the author of that. And thus, I would like to wish a comment from the authority and of our organizer whether the discussion, as you had initiated it initially when the conference was announced. Perhaps you know everything and you are considering and thinking that nothing actually happens and does not lead to the way you wished. So this is really a tricky question. So, Mr. Martins, thank you so much. I would like to remind once again that when we decided to draft those materials, you have been included in the folders when you entered the conference. So, as those free surveys or research carried out as regards the construction sector, so we were quite provocative, so that contracting authority would say what we should do further on. What would be the vision of the contracting authority, of investor, of client? What would their expectations would be in 5 to 10 years? Of course, we know that our market is small scale. It's actually closed. I'm sorry, but we are not very tended to select suppliers and executors from abroad. We are really relying on local construction sector. We actually are not paying taxes, and then we are complaining and whining that there is no money in the state budget, and then we are blaming each other. And what could we as a construction control bureau could do? And in the morning welcome speech, I mentioned that we really have put our accents and we have really found our focuses, and that responsibility of contracting authority and of general contractor is clearly defined in the law as well. On our behalf, we will provide and deliver such explanatory materials for what actually that means, what types of control, etc., would be included, would be applied, what kinds of responsibility exist, and what kind of responsibility could be established once again, so that that responsibility would not be avoided by some arrangements in contract or agreements, so that responsibility would be really legally binding. So levels of subcontractors should be really regulated, as actually the world is standing on those subcontractors and those small specialized niche companies providing particular type of work. You never know then that necessity will occur, and if only preventive mechanisms are prevented. Of course, the only exception is that general contractor should supervise the subcontractors and may not avoid his responsibility as regards the work done by subcontractors. Of course, we awaited that contracting authorities would be more active and saying what we really wanted and what their expectations were. So, according to the materials provided, we can to certain conclusions, and we would really thank Competition Council, as Competition Council really have provided carried out a really good study on those subcontractors in public procurement procedures, and we actually also invited and encouraged that survey on construction sector to be carried out. So we have really good results on civil engineers. They have really good remuneration. The taxes have been paid for them, etc. So it's really good and transparent and open business. So of course, in public buildings or buildings of public interest, so on civil and engineering structures, we can really learn from that best practice existing in other disciplines of our construction. And review or study carried out by our office that Mr. Jurgis mentioned as a representative of a municipality, that the most unsatisfied person or agent in the process of improvement or amendment of the existing legislation are municipalities themselves. And perhaps they are not really happy about that, because the new regulation would not provide many possibilities to make some quite illegal schemes for their own benefit. Still, we prefer simplification of regulation so that it would be more comprehensible and more understandable, without a lot of different references and cross-references found in other legislation. So we wished also to show that digitization result. So the world is very dynamic in digitization, and those BIM solutions are completely different from that procedure to be taken by a civil engineer or by a designer to design a building. So the state does not bother about templates, about forms, etc. So state really offers result-based and outcome-based regulation and laws and regulations. And we see that majority of countries really follow that trend. And if a general contractor really undertakes the contract for construction of particular building, so he may not avoid or really step out or exit that contract. Still, existing regulation is not preferred by constructors themselves, and construction boards are not in favor of that administrative regulation in construction sector. We really hope and expect that regulation in construction will be really much more transparent and much more simplified. Thank you so much for panelists, and of course I would really prefer to express my gratitude to the panelists taking part in the discussion, and as I represent as a representative, we will solve and review those issues during 2016, and my colleague Juris Spiridonos really outlined those focuses, what will happen